predominantly cloudy and still quite chilly with temperatures suppressed in single figures. Well, we've got that rain, which is likely to linger in parts of the east even into the weekend. So we'll continue to see some outbreaks of rain across southeast Scotland, eastern parts of England on Saturday. Elsewhere, many places will be dry and bright with some sunny spells in the west and staying largely dry into Monday as well, and also turning colder.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. As the war in Ukraine intensifies, we'll bring you the latest and we'll be asking what we can do to help. And we're talking babies in the workplace and flexible working with Dame Andrea Leadsom MP. Plus, should we stop saying chairman and start saying chair instead? Do you care? Does it matter? First, it's the news.
Good afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A Bangladeshi cargo ship has been hit by a missile at the Ukrainian Black Sea port of Olvia. This video purportedly shows the vessel on fire, posted by the Ukrainian government. One crew member has been killed and rescue efforts are underway to save others. Meanwhile, conflicting reports are emerging on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands, despite heavy shelling. Speaking in Lithuania, Foreign Secretary Liz Truss said Russian aggression must be contained.
Putin must lose in Ukraine. We're helping Ukraine defend itself. Our defensive weapons from the United Kingdom are now being used to stop Russian tanks. And it's vital at this juncture that we keep our foot on the gas. We've worked with the US, the EU and G7 to cut off funding for Putin's war machine, kicking Russian banks out of the financial system. We've also shut our airspace to Russian planes, and we're fast-forwarding sanctions against Russian oligarchs. But we need to go further.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss speaking there earlier. The latest figures from the UN Refugee Agency show 1 million people fled Ukraine in the past week, but some citizens like Ksenia Donikova believe trying to leave is too dangerous.
This is my home And so I will stay here, and if somebody will need me, I will try to help. And also, it's very dangerous now to go by car to some to the western region, so that's why I'm just stay home.
The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes. In the largest referral in the history of the ICC, the UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs have been dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. Here, the Health Secretary has told NHS leaders to stop using energy supplied by Russian-owned company Gazprom. More than a dozen NHS trusts in England are thought to be using the firm, along with several local councils. Last year, the contracts were reportedly worth £16 million. Sajid Javid has also requested a wider review of any Russian role in supply chains across the health service. The sporting world is also taking action, with Formula One announcing it's terminated its Russian Grand Prix contract. Meanwhile, athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete at the 2022 Winter Paralympics that start on Saturday. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to allow them to take part under a neutral flag. That announcement was met by criticism and the threat of a boycott. The IPC says the situation in the athlete villages has become untenable. Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries says Russia should be stripped of international events.
It's why I strongly support and continue to encourage the kind of emotional displays of solidarity we've seen across sporting events in the last week. Lights and symbols cannot stop bullets and bombs. But when Russians see their favourite footballers wearing shirts emblazoned with the bright blue and yellow of the Ukrainian flag, it helps open their eyes to the cold reality of Putin's actions.
Jean Dorries there. In other news, Sarah Everard's family has been paying tribute to her a year after she was murdered by a police officer. In a statement, they say they miss Sarah all the time and have been overwhelmed by the support from the public. Ms Everard was killed by serving Met Police officer Wayne Cousins as she walked home in South London. The Ministry of Justice plans to close almost half of its Nightingale courts in the UK within weeks. The temporary courts were set up to cope with the backlog of cases during the COVID-19 pandemic. 11 are due to be shut down at the end of the month. The remaining 12 will stay open until March next year. And there's more travel chaos in the capital, with commuters in London facing the second 24-hour tube strike in a week. Members of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union are in a deadlocked dispute over jobs, pay and pensions. And voting's underway in the Birmingham Erdington by-election, which was triggered by the death of Labour frontbencher Jack Dromey. The former leading trade unionist had represented the constituency since 2010. 12 candidates are standing for the seat, with the result expected late this evening. This is GB News. We'll have more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to the briefing with Gloria De Piero.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, we'll bring you the very latest on the war in Ukraine and the West's response as Russia seizes the key city of Kherson. And as 1 million Ukrainians flee for their lives, I'll be asking how we can help. And I'm talking to Conservative MP Damian Green, who pressed the government to do more for refugees. I'm talking with Dame Andrea Leadsom about support for those crucial early years with a child, though she's not a fan of MPs taking babies into the House of Commons chamber. And as business leaders claim we should say chair rather than chairman, I'll be asking, does it matter? Do you care? Let me know by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. The UK has been a leading force for tough action against Russia and in support of Ukraine, but the government's response to the growing refugee crisis has been criticised by some, including some Conservative MPs. Joining me now is Damian Green, former Tory Immigration Minister and effectively Deputy Prime Minister under Theresa May. Damian Green, it is good to see you. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Gloria.
You raised concerns, you were one of the MPs who raised concerns on Monday that the government wasn't doing enough to provide refuge for those fleeing Ukraine. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, went further on Tuesday, but the Labour leader Keir Starmer said the government's plans to relax visa rules for Ukrainians still do not go far enough. Do you agree with him?
Well, it's difficult to answer that question because one of the things that I welcomed, and you're right, on behalf of the One Nation Caucus, more than 40 of us wrote to the Prime Minister saying this isn't enough. We got more on the statement, but what we haven't got are the details yet. The new element, which did seem to me to be a very significant step forward, was the humanitarian sponsorship pathway, which would allow individuals or companies or charities to sponsor refugees. So even those who had no connection with this country did have the chance of coming here. And that seemed to us a very important step forward. Now, the Home Secretary not unreasonably said they haven't got the details of that scheme ready yet. So I'm hoping day by day that we will hear more of the details, hopefully by the end of this week. And only then can you seriously answer the question of whether it's enough or not. I mean, I very much hope it will be. And I think the intention from the government absolutely is there, that Britain will play a full role in solving what will be the most appalling refugee crisis, clearly.
There are differences of views on your own benches. Your colleague, Sir Edward Lee, praised Ms Patel for refusing to drop visa requirements and, quote, throw away the immigration rule book. He said his Lincolnshire constituents had already done our bit in terms of migration from Eastern Europe. There'll be some people watching who agree with him. What do you say to him and them?
I'd say that this is an unprecedented situation. That we now have the kind of land war in Europe that we all thought had been consigned to the history books, and that with modern warfare techniques and with the utter ruthlessness and barbarity of the way the Russians are behaving, firing missiles into blocks of flats, then inevitably, we already think more than 1 million people are fleeing Ukraine. It could become several million people. So of those, best guess, none of us can know, is that hundreds of thousands of people will come to the UK. So, and I think the overwhelming majority of the British people will have a generous humanitarian response to this. I know from my own constituents here in Kent, in Ashford, they're saying basically, what can we do to help? What's the most efficient way we can help? There's no feeling that these people are a threat. These people are being bombed out of their own homes. We feel sorry for them, and we want to do something practical to help.
Just looking at what the West can do and looking at what the Foreign Secretary has said this morning, we need to make sure that the Russian economy is crippled so it is unable to continue to fund Putin and the war machine. Is that a reasonable statement of intent? Is that something that is achievable? Damien Green. I think we may have lost Damien. Oh, no, he's back. Damien Green, sorry, we lost you momentarily. I don't know if you got the gist of my question. I was putting a line from Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary's speech that she made a short time ago about making sure that the Russian economy is crippled so it is unable to continue to fund Putin and the war machine.
Yes, and that's clearly a sensible aim. It's a radical aim, obviously, but I think therefore one of the things that we need to act on, the biggest lever Putin has, is the oil and gas he sells the West, and so the Germans have already said they are going to announce a significant change to their energy mix to stop relying. That they're obviously the country that has most to lose immediately from this, but we've got to do that. We've got to stop paying for the gas, because that is funding Putin's war machine. So, and I think all the other economic ties, I mean, here in this country, obviously a lot of money has come through the City of London. We've already closed down the SWIFT payment system to the big Russian banks, but there will no doubt be more to be done. And we should accept that this will cause some pain to our own economy. There will be some things that people have made money from over the years that they won't be able to in future. But looking at the sacrifices that people in Ukraine are making, that's a pretty small sacrifice for us to make.
Is it easy for us to say we are well paid after all? Does the government need to do more to make sure that those who are already struggling to pay their bills, gas bills, don't struggle further?
Well, I mean, I think the government has, as you know, taken some measures already to deal with the fuel crisis. There was a fuel price crisis before this happened. This will only make it worse. I think there are things, as I say, the government can do in the short run. In the medium and long term, there's a lot more we can do with our energy mix, including, I would hope to start building new nuclear capacity, which is carbon free, so it helps on net zero, but also it doesn't rely on the weather in the way that sun and wind do. So we need an appropriate energy mix to keep our own lights on. But what we need to do is to take a long-term look and determination, not just this week, but for years to come, to say we want to stop relying on Russian gas and oil.
We're just looking, I should tell viewers, at pictures of refugees just over the Ukrainian border. I just wanted to let our viewers know that, Damien Green. I just wanted to ask you about another story that it is being reported today that the government are seeking to draw up plans, Michael Gove seeking to draw up plans to seize British property owned by Russian oligarchs with links to Vladimir Putin. How practical is that? Surely that would be subject to many legal challenges.
It would be, excuse me, and there are, I mean, some people are saying they're impatient to sort of get on with the measures against the oligarchs, and yeah, I've seen newspaper reports of the government thinking that it is legally quite difficult. I think it may well be that there needs to be new legislation brought before the House of Commons to make sure that the British government is acting legally, because one of the things we're trying to defend in this is the rule of law. So we ourselves always have to act legally. So I suspect there may well need to be new sanctions legislation put through the House of Commons. And all I can say is that we've seen what's happened inside the House of Commons this week. There will be, I think, a huge cross-party appetite to pass any necessary legislation as fast as possible, because we want to get on with this.
And just to ask you about Nadine Dorries, the Culture Secretary's statement. She's been addressing MPs this morning. She's going to be meeting international allies later to discuss what further economic and cultural sanctions could be taken. In terms of the cultural sanctions, what impact is it designed to have? Are they designed to have?
It's designed, and I think it is really important, and we saw this with South Africa during the apartheid era, that sport at the same time is trivial, but at the same time hugely important, and a way of bringing home to the Russian population that the old ways of doing things are no longer allowed, is for their sporting heroes not to be allowed to compete internationally, because very regrettably their leader has made Russia a pariah state. So I think the sporting and cultural boycotts, they're always terrible for the individuals concerned and often unfair for the individuals concerned. But nevertheless, I'm afraid they are a necessary tool in the battle against Putin and Lavrov and the disgusting people who are currently running the Russian state.
And just finally, to return to the issue of refugees, right at the beginning, we're seeing pictures right now. You said that you wanted to look at the detail of what the Home Secretary had announced on Tuesday. You were hopeful that it would be enough. When do you expect to get the detail? When can we all see that detail to analyse it and check whether it will be enough?
It's a good question, to which the honest answer is I don't know when we're going to get it. I had hoped from what the Home Secretary said that it would be a few days. I mean, if we don't get it before the weekend, if we get it early next week, then that's okay. It's better to get it right than to rush something out before all the details are nailed down. But I know there is an enormous wellspring of generosity out there that people want to help refugees. And so I hope the government can set up a practical system that will allow people to make some practical difference for these poor people who've been bombed out of their homes.
Grateful for your views this morning, Damien Green. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Next, I'll have the story of a Manchester man who has managed to flee the war with his Ukrainian girlfriend. And our security editor will bring you the latest developments in the war. Before that, it is time for your weather.
Hello again. Something of a dull, damp sandwich today. A slice of the country dull and soggy, but some brighter skies across the east and some sunny spells developing in the far west as well. The reason we have a weather front kind of stagnating across the UK. There's not a lot of isobars on the chart, so not a lot of wind to shift it. So stuck under this weather front, you're going to see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Southern and central Scotland, northwest England, much of Wales, down across the Midlands as well. But for the far southwest of England, Pembrokeshire, Northern Ireland, west coast of Scotland, mostly dry and bright. And from Yorkshire down to southeast England, also staying largely fine. And here, the top temperature's 10 in Hull, 13 in London, but stuck under that rain band, 7 or 8 in Newcastle and Manchester at the very best. And that rain bands will only slowly work further eastwards through the night. So staying pretty soggy, the rain pepping up across eastern Scotland, pushing more widely across northeast England, perhaps turning a lot drier across Wales overnight, but we'll keep a lot of cloud. That'll help to keep the temperatures up, but with some clearer skies. South Wales, Northern Ireland, temperatures may dip close to freezing. Under that zone of cloud and rain, though, temperatures will hold up. But it will feel cold again here through Friday. East coast of Scotland, northeast England, parts of East Anglia, maybe still into parts of the Midlands. Dull, damp, dank again. A bit more rain across the southeast of England on Friday compared to today as well. But further west again, generally dry, a brighter day across the Midlands, although still predominantly cloudy and still quite chilly with temperatures suppressed in single figures where we've got that rain, which is likely to linger in parts of the east even into the weekend. So we'll continue to see some outbreaks of rain across southeast Scotland, eastern parts of England on Saturday. Elsewhere, many places will be dry and bright with some sunny spells in the west and staying largely dry into Monday as well, and also turning colder.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat. Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Ukrainian journalist Maria Romanenko and her English partner Jez Myers have made the dangerous journey fleeing from Ukraine. Our Northwest reporter Bradley Harris spoke to them last night.
This is a story about a couple who were forced to flee Kiev, a city they both love so much, and take refuge at a friend's house in Warsaw in Poland after taking on an incredible 23-hour journey across the border from Ukraine. Now, Maria, who's a Ukrainian journalist, wasn't sure whether she'd even get a visa to come to the UK for safety. In the end, with the help of her partner and the British embassy, she managed to get her visa waived. And her partner Jez, who's from Manchester, came back to the UK with her last night. I caught up with them outside the terminal building at Manchester Airport to find out how their experience was on this incredible journey.
Just very tiresome, very long. It was scary in parts because there was this bit with like a kind of like a fenced area, and it was absolutely crushed there because there were like thousands of people in this very small area. And I felt sick at one point, so that I really needed to like push myself out, because it was like, if I don't get out from here, I don't know what will happen, but I was just really scared. So I like pushed myself out, and Jez was left behind, and I was very worried about him. There were like people carried out, like unconscious, and a report of somebody dying, and it was just like a very, very scary environment. It was very tiring, and again, as Jez said, no food, no water. I wasn't able to go to the toilet for 23 hours.
There were some long journeys on the way. I think we've done 1,500 kilometres on roads and walking, and then the flight as well. So just glad to be back. I could kiss the lovely Mancunian ground.
And to have a foreign army, that's very, very strong foreign army, come to your country and just bomb everything and have airstrikes and have troops and have people, paratroopers, land in an airport that they previously tried to destroy. Pretty much positive that Ukraine will prevail. It's just a question of how many days it will take, how many victims it will take, how many casualties it will take. So I think there's various ways how it could go, but I know that for sure, sooner or later, Ukraine will win, because the truth is on our side.
Catching up with Maria and Jez really gave me a sense of how things have changed so quickly and so dramatically in Ukraine. Maria tells me that her family are still over there and she's still in touch with them. Maria and Jez are here in the UK and they are safe, but it just goes to show how far some people are going to go to try and flee a country stricken by war.
Thanks to Bradley for bringing us that report. Let's get the latest on the situation in Ukraine now. It's a week since Russia invaded, and now the southern key port city of Kherson is the first city to have fallen to Russian troops. Kyiv, the capital, suffered another night of attacks, and the International Criminal Court has launched an investigation into likely war crimes by Russian forces. Joining me now is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, to bring us up to date. Mark, people are fleeing Ukraine. We're looking at a massive refugee crisis, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely huge, in the sense that more than 1 million people have actually fled Ukraine already, heading over to friendlier countries, NATO allies effectively. Poland has taken the bulk of these refugees. They are now saying 575,000 refugees have fled over the border to Poland. It's a rate of about 50,000 a day. The images that are coming out are absolutely heart-wrenching. Most of those that are getting across the border are women and children, some very old men, but of course, as we know, those of fighting age, 16 to 60, for the most part, are not leaving Ukraine, are staying behind to fight the Russian troops. So The refugee centres have been set up in Poland, 8 reception centres along its very long border, but also in Hungary, in Slovakia, in Romania, in Moldova. Similar scenes, not to the same extent as Poland, but a very significant refugee crisis that for the first instance is being felt, of course, on the borders with Ukraine, these various countries and their borders with Ukraine. But that will inevitably mean that a significant proportion of those who are there, if this goes into a longer-term conflict, will find themselves heading further west towards countries like the UK.
Any prospects for peace?
Well, those peace talks are due to get underway in about an hour or two's time on the Ukrainian-Belarusian border. This is the third occasion that the representatives from Ukraine and representatives from Russia have got together. They're pretty far apart. That's probably an understatement. But listen, the very fact that they're continuing to talk is at least something. It gives some hope that at the very least there might be some kind of temporary cessation of the fighting that could allow the 7 million odd people who are displaced within Ukraine to get to safer areas of Ukraine or even across the border, as we were mentioning before. The Russian delegation, well, they've arrived for these talks, and the Ukrainians are expected to arrive very shortly to begin the latest round of negotiations. Now, interestingly, the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has offered Budapest as a potential venue, a more neutral venue, as he describes it, for the talks. There have been concerns from the Ukrainian delegation about actually going over the border into Belarus, which is clearly a very key ally of Vladimir Putin at this stage. But Viktor Orban saying Budapest might be a more suitable neutral venue. But that doesn't get us over the issues that they're still far apart on.
And finally, tell us about the significance of Kherson, the first major population centre which has fallen to the Russians.
Yeah, really for several days now, there has been mixed reports coming out of Kherson. It is a strategic city, a port city in the south of Ukraine. And the latest reports are that the city is under the control of Russian forces. The administrative headquarters for the region in Kherson are said now to be fully under the control of Russian authorities. However, the administrative leader for Kherson region has been saying that he is still in control in terms of offering support to the people of that region, not to believe the fake news. I think there is no doubt, even the UK Ministry of Defence acknowledges that there are Russian forces on the ground in this strategic port city, that there is street-to-street fighting, but there's a long way between actually troops on the ground and fighting in the city and actually the city having completely fallen and being in the control of those Russian forces.
Mark White, as ever, thank you for bringing us your expertise. After the break, we will be hearing from the former Conservative Leader of the House, Dame Andrea Leadsom MP, on the importance of support for parents during those crucial early years and what she thinks about MPs bringing babies into the House of Commons chamber. First, the news.
Thanks, Gloria. It's 12:31. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. A Ukrainian negotiator says talks to try and secure a ceasefire with Russia are due to resume in the next couple of hours. That as a Bangladeshi cargo ship has been hit by a missile at the Ukrainian Black Sea port of Olvia. This video purportedly shows the vessel on fire, posted by the Ukrainian government. One crew member has been killed, and the Bangladeshi government says rescue efforts are underway to save others. Meanwhile, conflicting reports are emerging on whether the Ukrainian city of Kherson has been seized by Russian troops. The UK's Ministry of Defence says the cities of Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Mariupol remain in Ukrainian hands despite heavy shelling. The International Criminal Court is launching an investigation into alleged war crimes. In the largest referral in the history of the ICC, the UK and 37 allies have called for a probe into Russia's atrocities. It follows reports that cluster and vacuum bombs have been dropped in residential areas. Moscow denies it's targeting civilians. The sporting world is also taking action, with Formula One announcing it's terminated its Russian Grand Prix contract. Meanwhile, athletes from Russia and Belarus will not be allowed to compete at the 2022 Winter Paralympics in Beijing. The International Paralympic Committee has reversed its original decision to allow them to take part from Saturday under a neutral flag. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. The briefing with Gloria De Piero. We'll be back in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, Dame Andrea Leadsom MP might not have made Conservative leader when she stood back in 2017, but she has worked tirelessly for greater support for families during those crucial early years. I talked to her about that, about flexible working, and what she thinks about taking babies into the House of Commons chamber. The Procedure Committee of the House of Commons will be looking into that next week.
Andrea, good to see you. Early years is something you've campaigned on since the moment you entered Parliament back in 2010. I remember it well. Why is it so important to you?
Well, actually, Gloria, I campaigned on it with many of your colleagues, so it's very important to lots of MPs across the House. I mean, I first got involved with it back in 1997, just a couple of years after my first child was born, and I'd had postnatal depression myself. So when I was asked to get involved with a charity that helps families who are struggling to form a bond with their baby because they are depressed, really struggling with a childbirth experience or whatever it is, I took it on, became chairman of it, absolutely loved it. And that is now, almost 25 years ago. So yeah, it's been a long-standing passion of mine, is to really improve the support that families get in that critical early period.
Can I ask you, how long did you have postnatal depression?
A really short time, and yes, it's fine to ask. I mean, that son is now 26, weeks. And it was a short period of time, but it was just actually for me, very specifically, because I was working in a bank. I'd just been made a senior executive. I was just like, you know, I can have this baby. It's just going to be, you know, life as usual. I'll just carry on with my career. And of course, then I stopped work 2 weeks before he was born, and I'd been sort of doing 12-hour days. And then the deal was that I would go back after 10 weeks because they needed me, and it was all career. And then this baby comes along, and it was a horrific birth experience, very unexpected. So you kind of deal with the misery of a horrible birth experience. And then, oh, you know, what's this? So it was quite short-lived, mainly because I went back to work, but I did have amazing support from family and also a superb health visitor. So I could see, actually, this is my lifeline, and it actually changed my priorities, becoming a parent, and it really gave me a passion for making it better for other people.
And you recently convened a debate in Parliament about kinship care for babies. Just explain kinship.
Yeah, so essentially what happens to a lot of families who really cannot look after a baby or a child for, you know, reasons of a death, a tragic death, or perhaps incarceration of one or both parents, or drug addictions, or all sorts of, you know, mental health problems, etc., etc. The reasons why children get taken away. And obviously, very often, in the first instance, that baby or child will be looking for a family member, very often grandparents, but it could be an uncle or an aunt or an older sibling who will care for them. And local authorities do seek that kind of kinship care arrangement. And the reason for holding this debate is actually triggered by a constituent who came to see me, who himself and his wife were becoming kinship carers for their little niece, 8 months old at the time. And his mum had been looking after this baby and would really struggled. You know, she was in her 60s and struggling to cope with a new baby. So they took on the care of this baby. And what he'd come to see me about was the fact that his employer and his wife's employer, both working full time, neither of them would allow them anything other than unpaid leave. Now, they had 2 older children anyway, so they couldn't just afford to both stop working, but they had this baby who'd obviously been through some very difficult experiences, and they were trying to form a bond, you know, adding to their family, get the older children to love this new arrival, and yet there was nothing for them. So I just found that completely unjust. You know, if they'd been fostering, if they'd been adopting, and of course if they'd had their own baby, then you have statutory support. You've got maternity leave, paternity leave. Your employer will be required to support you financially for a while. But with kinship care, nothing. So that's why I held the debate, was to argue that, first of all, if you are taking on kinship care for a baby, you should have the same rights to maternity, paternity leave. And in particular, if you are an employer, you should be treating this couple or this new carer as somebody who's just had a baby.
What are your chances of getting a change in the law on this? You're in the governing party, very senior member of it, former cabinet minister. Are you going to get the government to listen?
Well, I really hope so. And actually, previously I was Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and working on an employment rights bill that was looking at a whole mixture of different changes to employment law. And one of them that I was pressing, and this was before the pandemic, was flexible workers standard. Now, obviously, since the pandemic, by default, everybody's working flexibly. But actually, before the pandemic, it was something that people were a bit like, well, why would employers want to do that? But actually, there's a lot of evidence that says not only would it be great for families to be able to, you know, perhaps work from 10 o'clock on a Monday so that you can take your kids to school, maybe, you know, work until Friday at 3 because then you can pick them up once a week and do the rest of the week in between, or indeed far more flexibly, because it's good for the employer, because that employee is now much more motivated, much more satisfied with the job. There's evidence that productivity, in fact, increases. And also, of course, trying to get many women back into the workplace, it means that they would apply for jobs. So if you actually could apply for a job, you know, Tuesday to Saturday or afternoons only, that does give you the chance to actually take on many more opportunities.
How do you feel when you hear government ministers saying, get back to the office, everybody, then?
I mean, I certainly think there's a balance. I am not a fan of this constant virtual working. I think it's a big problem if everybody's at home, because those conversations around the coffee machine and, certainly for my two sons who are now working in their first or second jobs, they've really missed that sort of camaraderie of a team meeting where you've got a whiteboard and you're all, working together on a project. That cannot be replaced with just virtual working. So it is the flexibility of work that's the priority, not the exclusive working from home, never going back to the office again.
Do you think having more women in politics has made these conversations easier to have?
Definitely. It's really interesting for me when I first came into politics. I was sort of talking about babies a lot and people would be like, oh, banging on about babies. But now actually those voices are drowned out by the successive new intakes, and particularly the number of new women MPs who are like, yes, exactly. That's what we need to be doing. We need to enable women and men, of course, because so many men would absolutely love to play much more of a role in their babies' and children's lives than they're able to now, because of the fact that 9 to 5, 5 days a week, jacket on the back of the chair type of approach that we've had in the past. So actually more women in politics has helped men as well to become empowered to be more hands-on as dads.
Babies in the chamber, how do you feel?
Not so keen, I mean, I think going through the lobby is absolutely fine. But actually, I kind of remember working in a bank, I would not have been taking my babies into the office. And, there's a time and a place. I don't think you just, because you want to support families to be more hands-on, that you should therefore just say, oh yeah, let's just, start taking babies everywhere we go and let everybody else put up with it. I don't agree with that. On the other hand, I am a huge fan of breastfeeding. It's incredibly good for baby's health, for mum's health, for the bonding process, for, reducing obesity and later childhood illnesses and so on. And so I actually do think that in our society more generally, we need to be much more tolerant to women breastfeeding in public places.
Andrea Ledson, fascinating. Brilliant interview. So
Thanks,
pleased that we did
Gloria.
it. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Now, Britain's leading business groups are calling for the government to scrap the term chairman, urging the use of the neutral term chair instead. Joining me to discuss this is Dr. Roger Barker, Director of Policy at the Institute of Directors. Hello there. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Before we get to the campaign that you're launching today, can I just ask you about what Andrea Leadsom said there in that interview? Flexible working is good for the employer and good for getting women back to the workplace. Do you think your members recognise that?
I think they do recognise that. I think many of them, of course, have embraced flexible working during the pandemic, and they're going to continue that. And we've surveyed our members on this issue, and the majority of them are actually going to keep flexible or hybrid type working indefinitely on a permanent basis, even beyond the pandemic. So there are real advantages to it. I mean, it depends, of course, a lot on the specific circumstances of a company. Some can deal with it better than others, but I would say in the majority of cases, hybrid working is here to stay.
Now let's talk about the campaign that you and other leading business groups are launching today. You want to drop the use of the word chairman. Why?
Well, it's in a very specific context, and that is in the model articles of association of companies. So these are documents that form the constitution of a company. Every company has to have them. And when you register your company at Companies House, you will generally use the model articles of association, which are provided by Companies House. And they are currently using the term chairman throughout this constitution, and we feel that they really should now move with the times. Most women don't want to be called chairman. They find the use of the term chairperson or chairwoman rather unwieldy. Most of our members feel that the right term for this role is chair. It's gender neutral. This change has been made in other important governance governance documents like the UK Corporate Governance Code. So we don't see why it shouldn't be changed also in these model articles of association.
The business secretary is reportedly opposed to what you're suggesting because changing the law on this would be too time-consuming. How are you going to convince him?
Well, I don't think it would be time convincing. It's a very small change to legislation. It could, for example, be inserted into forthcoming legislation, which the government is due to bring forward very soon around corporate governance and audit. So that change could be easily made. The model articles of association have been changed in the past to reflect other things, to reflect mental health discrimination. So I think this would be an easy win for the government, and 78% of our members support making this change. So an easy, low-hanging fruit for the government.
Don't you think it's more important, because these Companies House documents are quite hidden to most of us, isn't it more important to persuade your members and ask them to change how they address the chairman person in meetings and insist that they use the word chair in those meetings? I'm sure there are lots of board meetings that still address the person chairing the meeting as the chairman, regardless of their gender.
Yes, I mean, we would very much encourage our members to do that. And, we've made changes to our own job titles within the IOD itself. Really, it's time to use gender neutral language around these type of things. So we would encourage that. And
finally, some would argue it'd be a better use of your time to address the fact that as few as 8% of chief executives in the FTSE 100 are women. Isn't that the real battle?
Is a big battle, and also a similar percentage are company chairs as well. So that's another big battleground. There's a lot of work to be done, and this is a small change, but we think it's symbolically an important change. So we want to fight this battle on many fronts, and leaving the chairman in this document, symbolically, it's sending all the wrong signals in terms of inclusion and what we're trying to achieve. We want directorship to be open to anyone, and language is important, and we don't want to send these unconscious signals to women that somehow directorship or chairmanship is not for them.
Really enjoyed our conversation, Dr. Roger Barker from the Institute of Directors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Now, as the war in Ukraine continues, supplies are being gathered in their truckloads by British volunteers to send to Poland and Ukraine. Our reporter, Amelia Harper, has this report on the volunteers responsible for collecting donations and those driving them across the border into Ukraine.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine is intensifying. But so too is the effort in the UK to help Ukrainian refugees and soldiers. After a call out on social media, this house in Cambridge, now a storage facility for supplies to be sent to the Ukraine-Poland border. Volunteers creating packs of donations for both civilian refugees and for the Ukrainian soldiers.
Okay, so you are in charge of the box for 2 children and make them happy. Yeah, whatever they need. Okay, you do it.
Children choosing what children in a war zone might need to survive. Their mother, Alicia, organised the collections.
I woke up to the news and I was crying. That's all I was doing. And I'm sorry. I just could not do nothing. I couldn't sit and watch the news. And in more news I was watching, the more overwhelmed I was. And I just can't imagine being in their position. People were coming and coming and coming. Everyone cried.
For Ukrainian volunteers, there's worry that President Putin has sealed their country's fate after the recent bombing of Kyiev's Freedom Square.
It was destroyed completely with a bomb, blast bomb. So I imagination how many people could be dying there. So it was just there to buy a bread. It's horrible.
From here, supplies will be driven to refugees on Poland's border with Ukraine. After that, a handful of volunteers based in Poland are driving into Ukraine to get the packs to soldiers.
So it took us around like 2 hours on the way to Ukraine. On the way back, we were actually escorted by the police force, Ukrainian police force, to get to the border as fast as possible. So we skipped all the long queue, which is like around 30, 40 kilometers. There were checkpoints every like 4 or 5 kilometers. There were actually fireplaces where the big barrels where they were putting stuff inside to just burn them. And because it was -7 degrees.
From volunteers in Poland to volunteers here in the UK, the need to help others is uniting communities across Europe.
Once someone smart told me that if you save one person, you're going to save the whole world. If helping isn't what makes you human, then I don't know what is.
Amelia Harper, GB News, Cambridge.
Thanks for getting in touch today on Ukrainians fleeing their country. Elizabeth says these people really deserve our help. Half emailed to say, I'm supporting Ukraine in every way I can. My heart goes out to all the refugees that have left their men to fight and to the young and elderly. Vivian has an idea. Why not use the oligarch properties in England to house the Ukrainian refugees we take in? And on the chair or chairman debate, Kevin got in touch to say doorman or door, footman or foot. Of course it matters. Madge says, what can be more respectful than Madam Chairman? Thank you so much for getting in touch today. Thank you for your company. You have been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. I'm back on Monday at 12. Isabel Oakshott will be here tomorrow at noon. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. For now, it's time for your weather.
Hello again. Something of a dull, damp sandwich today. A slice of the country, dull and soggy, but some brighter skies across the east and some sunny spells developing in the far west as well. The reason we have a weather front kind of stagnating across the UK. There's not a lot of isobars on the chart, so not a lot of wind to shift it. So stuck under this weather front, you're going to see a lot of cloud and outbreaks of rain. Southern and central Scotland, northwest England, much of Wales, down across the Midlands as well. But for the far southwest of England, Pembrokeshire, Northern Ireland, west coast of Scotland, mostly dry and bright, and from Yorkshire down to southeast England, also staying largely fine. And here, the top temperature's 10 in Hull, 13 in London, but stuck under that rain band 7 or 8 in Newcastle and Manchester at the very best. And that rain bands will only slowly work further eastwards through the night, so staying pretty soggy. The rain pepping up across eastern Scotland, pushing more widely across northeast England, perhaps turning a lot drier across Wales overnight, but we'll keep a lot of cloud. That'll help to keep the temperatures up, but with some clearer skies. South Wales, Northern Ireland, temperatures may dip close to freezing. Under that zone of cloud and rain, though, temperatures will hold up. But it will feel cold again here through Friday. East coast of Scotland, northeast England, parts of East Anglia, maybe still into parts of the Midlands. Dull, damp, dank again. A bit more rain across the southeast of England